Hello, my name is David Hawkins,
And I am Vedat Nas.
and this is our presentation on networking models, the critical path method. This presentation will define exactly what a critical path analysis is, as well as identifying what industries use the method. An example of critical path analysis that was used by a business, the business being Network Rail, will be discussed and evaluated.
Furthermore, a typical example question for solving a real-life problem will be included, and the advantages and disadvantages for companies of using the critical path analysis will be reviewed. What is the critical path method? Critical path method is a useful project management tool used to manage and schedule complex projects. According to Joan Rodriguez 2013, the critical path method networking model was developed in 1957 to address some challenges on complex projects.
So, what industries use the critical path method? Well, Joan Rodriguez 2013 states that the critical path method is a frequently and most commonly used scheduling technique in the construction industry. Although Exponent 2010 also argue that the aerospace and defence industries are regular users of the critical path method.
To produce critical path analysis, there are 6 key steps. First step is specifying the individual activities. Second step is identifying the sequence of the activities. And the first step is drawing the network diagram.
An example of a critical path analysis can be seen on the slide. Each activity is identified by a letter, and step 4 of producing a critical path analysis is to estimate the completion time for each activity. This is identified in the middle box above each letter. For example, for activity A, the estimated completion time is 6 weeks, and for activity C, it is 12 weeks. Then we move on to step 5, which is to identify the longest path through the network. This is known as the critical path. For this particular critical path network diagram, the critical path is highlighted with green arrows. The final step is to identify any activities which have slack time. For example, on the example critical path network diagram on the slide, it can be seen that activity L, which follows activity C, begins at week 36, whereas activity C ends in week 28. Therefore, it is apparent there is an 8-week gap, which would be known as slack time. This slack time helps to identify how many weeks a project can be crashed by.
So, example of a typical problem for this technique would be to reduce the overall project time. At the moment, the project time is 44 weeks. To reduce the project time, activities on the critical path have to be crashed, although there is an additional cost for the cross-crashing activity. However, time saved from crashing the activity reduces the overall cost of the project.
Now we move on to a real-life example of a critical path network diagram being used by an organisation. The case study that we will be discussing regards the railway network company Network Rail. In 2006, Network Rail began a major project to repair the Leven Viaduct in Cumbria. This repair work was required because of the heavy seas and corrosive saltwater in the area, but also the excessive use of the Leven Viaduct. Therefore, it was feared by Network Rail that this would become unsafe to use. The Times 100, Network Rail 2013, states that the viaduct was 500 metres long and the project was a £14 million investment.
According to the Times 100 Network Rail 2013, for the project on the Leven Viaduct, there were 5 main steps in the construction process. Step A involved fabrication of the steel, which was expected to take 4 months. Step B started once activity A has been completed. Step B involved preparing the site, which was expected to last 2 months. Step C started once activity B had been completed. Step C involved walkways being built, which also expected to last 2 months. Step D follows Step C and consisted constructing the deck. This also expected to last 2 months. Final step was Step E, which involved repairing the piers. This could take place same time as Step C, which means Step E was dependent upon activities A and B, and the duration of the final step is 5 months.
So, what were the outcomes of the project? Well, it was completed on 16th of July 2006, according to the Times 100 Network Rail 2013. The project was also completed on time and within budget, and it achieved the overall aim of the project, which was to improve the safety standards of the Leven Viaduct, and therefore guaranteed availability of a vital transport link to its customers for decades to come. In addition, according to BBC Cumbria 2008, in February 2007, the project won a prestigious engineering award, therefore improving the reputation of Network Rail in the process.
There are a number of advantages of using the critical path method. Firstly, it enables materials to be used effectively. For example, this could be using human resources by using certain employees for certain activities, and therefore using them more effectively and efficiently.
Business Studies Online 2013 states a major advantage for businesses using the critical path method is that they can identify and change any problems if required. Therefore, any businesses who have not used a critical path method may not have identified these problems.
Mindtools Limited 2013 argues it is an efficient method of monitoring and controlling complex projects. This links back to Juan Rodriguez's 2013 comment that the critical path method was specifically developed for complex projects.
A final advantage of using the critical path method for businesses is that it outlines time periods, identifying the minimum and maximum length of time needed to complete the project. Therefore, this helps the business's time management of the project and links back to our earlier advantage of enabling a business to manage its materials and resources effectively, as if there is an activity which has a large amount of slack time, employees can then be implemented into an activity which has no slack time.
However, there are disadvantages of using critical path method. Critical path analysis can be hard to follow and understand. The reason behind this because more activities there are, harder it is to understand and follow.
A further disadvantage is the project requires excellent human resource management on the part of the business. This involves not only in terms of the skills of the employees, but also in terms of allocating employees to certain activities.
Mindtools Limited 2013 suggests alternative methods, such as Gantt chart, could be more relevant in some instances. A Gantt chart is more likely to be used a less complex project.
A further disadvantage is that critical path method can be time-consuming to produce. Furthermore, it can result in a domino effect, as if one activity is delayed, then the activity that is meant to follow the delayed activity will also be delayed.
To conclude our presentation on critical path methods, we have identified that the construction, aerospace and the defense industries are the more common users of critical path method. We have also identified the typical problem question, which involves the reduced the overall project time.
We also looked at a case study on Network Rail on the Leven Viaduct and how it positively impacted business. And we've also identified the advantages and disadvantages of using the critical path method.
Finally, you can see our references that we used on critical path method.